So let me introduce Daniel O'Connor. He's an IP expert, and one of the most valuable thing we had, he presented, and he worked with one of the innovator that actually, I think a few years ago, he got like $450 million from Microsoft by claiming his IP. And he has a long history of supporting companies through IP and how to commercialize innovation. So I'm sure you will learn quite a few things from him. And please, with this said, Daniel.
Thank you, Alexi, and thanks everybody. What I'm a little bit different here, in as much as I work with small R&D teams and independent inventors to help them raise the capital they need and then commercialise that to a point where they can trade, sale, or license at whatever they're going to do for their exit. So I don't work with universities, I don't work with large corporates, so it'll be a little bit refreshing for you, but also quite innovative. And some of the tips I'm going to give you today will probably be able to be used in your area. Now, I'd like to share my screen if I can. Let's just try that. There we go. I hope you can see that. The purpose here of getting out is all about getting out wealthier, making sure you can take some money with you. So today I wanted to break it down into 3 different areas. One, I want to tell you about the 6 steps that we do to commercialize innovation for people who have no experience or little experience. Then I want to take it into some exit points, and I'll talk about 5. The 6th is, of course, a hybrid of the 5, any number of the 5. And then finally, I'm going to give you just one tip on how we exit to get the maximize the amount of money you can get without necessarily walking away from your project altogether. So let's get into it. Firstly, to describe the 6 steps, I'm going to have to tell you 2 things. One, commercialization is a linear process for when we work with people. We don't work on projects that are consumer-based. They're usually just provisional patent license and you're away. We work with industrial and commercial products and or projects, and we work them all the way through to maximize their value. And it's a linear process. There's A to B, B to C, C to D, and if you miss any of those steps, you will be either dragged back to fix it, or you'll get less money for your project, or you may not even be able to realize at the end of it. The second thing is these steps can become roadblocks if they're not dealt with, and it's very important to understand that. I'm just going to charge through these 6 steps to give you a quick overview of how that works. Firstly, ideation and modelling. Everybody understands the ideation side of it. That's what you've been doing, and I've had a lot of good speakers this morning talking about how to do that. The modelling is the commercial model, the way we interface what you have with the people who have the problem that you're going to solve. And we look at that in detail, including where they go to solve the problem right now, how much it costs them to solve the problem, how much it costs them to live with the problem if they choose not to solve it, and all of these things, because that's going to give us pricing, costing, distribution channels, everything we needed. Next, we look at ownership and protection. That's all about patenting, but it's a whole lot more. Prior to patenting, we use non-disclosure agreements, we use waiver of rights, non-compete agreements, all that sort of stuff, but it's fairly basic to make sure that we can push out the provisional patent to make sure that ultimately the conversion of the patent gets paid for by the project, not by the individual. Next, we have the funding. That's fairly understandable, but what we do a little bit differently is we look at for players in the industry or the market, and we use leverages to fund that. So we don't actually go and talk about high net worth individuals and talk about return on investment. That's pretty much a waste of time for individual investors or individual inventors or small R&D teams. Then we look at transitioning. It's the most overlooked step of all. That's where we lock the door of R&D and we start pushing everything into commercialization. We make sure that the R&D team, who may still manage the money, won't cycle back into R&D to fix things or add things to it and spend commercial money on R&D. Then we do scaling. That's where we say, okay, well, you've got something here. We're doing $5 million a year now, but we need to do $5 million a month to make this worthwhile. How do we do that? It's a whole different set of rules. It's a whole different skill set, and we generally bring in extra money and expertise to to leverage up. And scaling is pretty easy. Raising the money to scale is also very easy because you already have cash flow. And finally, exit, which is what I'm going to talk about today. Exit is not necessarily just an exit. We actually refer to it as the value realization point, because you don't necessarily have to get out. Certainly with a lot of independent inventors, they don't want to let their project go necessarily. They do want to bring in partners. They do want to see it grow. And I'm going to show you some creative ways to do that today. Now, what are the top 5 exit options? First one is trade sale. Everyone understands how that works. I sell my project to somebody who pays me cash or something else. Next, licensing, and we can get creative with licensing using geographic on demographic segmentation. So we can say we can sell 40 or 50 licenses around the world, and it can be on different markets. So it might be on cars, or it might be on trucks, whatever the product is. I have a client who does nothing but collect his money and audit companies. He has the glow stuff that goes onto watches, that special paint, and a lot of people copy him. And as a result, he goes around and takes action in different jurisdictions to make sure he can take them to court and get more money. And he loves doing that. He sits in Liechtenstein, that's where he lives, and all he does is tour the world to actually look at different watches at different stores in every country that he wants to litigate in. Next, we have IPO and RTO. Initial public offer of a public company is where you're listed on the stock exchange. Reverse takeover is less in Australia, but we still do it in over-the-counter in the USA and places like that. Participation is where we have, let's say, a company might be 100 years old and very good cash flow, and they're about to list, and they don't have any blue sky. And we look for technology to back into that project for part of the script from the company, and they get the blue sky as well as their long, regular returns on the investment that they've been doing for 100 years. Next, we have grow it out. This is a fairly awkward one. It's for people who want to dominate their project and not necessarily want to move on. And that's where we take the money from the profits from one project, which might be a location, and we just relocate a second one in the next suburb or city or state or country, and we start growing out every 12 months or 2 years, depending on how fast it can be, making sure that we maintain the culture. It means that that person, the inventor, is going to be broke for 20 years, but he'll have a huge asset at the end of it. Next is franchising. That's doing the same thing, but using other people's money, which is a much nicer way of doing it. Now, from here, I just want to talk now about one way to get out, how to make money from an exit. So firstly, we hunt from within the industry or the market for somebody who has already got your customers and you have their customers. So what you're able to do with leverages for there is a reciprocal trade leverage. So you can say, you've got 40,000 people who've using your product, and our product fits so well with your product that you can write to all of those people and say, how would you like to have our next iteration of our new invention? And you can buy it, use it with your existing product, and straight away they've got enough sales there to mitigate any sort of investment they make, and also for any purchase they make. Then once we've got that, we then focus on publicly listed companies when we're trying to qualify these companies. And there's a reason for that. When we get publicly listed companies, we then drill into their annual reports, and we then drill down to their audit reports within their annual reports. Sometimes you have to go back a few years, but you'll find how they managed acquisitions in the past. And that you can find out if they did script for script rollover, which I'll describe one for you in this. Script for script rollover is where we take your 10 shares and we swap them for, let's say, $5 million worth of shares in that public company. And as a result of that, you're not actually making a profit, you're just swapping shares. So it works out quite well for you. Now, when you're doing this drill down, you also look for the lead person in the mergers and acquisitions who was either on the executive team or the board team, because that's the person you're going to target. They're the easy way into that company. So once you've done that, we then look at swapping shares, as I mentioned, with the listed company. Now, the buyers then don't have to find money. If you're going to pay $5 million for your company because they want your project, they're going to have to budget for that. If it's going to be cash, they're going to have to go into future allocations, or they're going to have to take from last year's profits, which they don't like to do because for obvious reasons they can't then post those profits. Even though the assets value is there, it doesn't show up immediately. So it's not a profit and loss, and it's not a balance sheet item. It's actually owner's equity. So it makes it a lot cleaner for these people to actually make the acquisition if they do this right. Now, the way this happens is generally the board will approve it, and then they'll go back to shareholders to get approval. And all the shareholders are going to say is, yeah, allocate the shares. They're asking, can I give $5 million worth of new stock, issue it to this company for acquiring their 10 shares, which is 100% of their company, into this organisation? We'll bring the person in, and then we're going to run this, and immediately we know what it's worth because we have a 14 times multiplier instead of this guy's 2 times multiplier that he's enjoyed. So it's fairly easy to justify. Once you've done that, you can choose to hold or you can choose to sell. It's up to you as the inventor. And what we find is a lot of people come along and run the R&D department, and when they do that, you're actually giving your own shares a bump by making sure that the value goes up. So it's like a bonus for you. If your shares are trading at $8 and you've come in there and you've made that division sing, then your shares might go up to, let's say, $8.50. That is cream for you. Okay, so then I'm going to give you a quick example to show you how we did this. We took what would otherwise be fairly much a consumer product and we turned it into an industrial product, and then we layered on the different levels to get the most money we could for this individual inventor. This is a Queensland-based product. What you're looking at there is called wall web. What it does, if you've got a hole in the gyprock wall, you push that item through, it lodges against the far wall because you've got 2 panels in the gyprock wall. Once it hits that, you then pull the string and it floats out that parachute, the web, and it locks it. So it locks it up against the wall with the hole, up against the hole. And then you just take your spack filler, clean it in, scrape it across, and you're gone in less than 15 seconds if you wanted to. I'd say a minute, but I've seen this done in 15 seconds. So this guy knew he had a good product. He knew people would want this. It's about a $30 product in the US, in US dollars, and it fills a hole. So what we did is, in order to make the most out of this, we moved the manufacturing to China so we get a low-cost opportunity. We then shipped directly to the USA wholesaler. We found that wholesaler through a BVI company we deal with, who our specification for that was to find us a manufacturer who already has SKUs, SKUs, stock keeping unit numbers, in these companies: Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace, and Mitre 10. Between them, there's 21,000 stores in North America alone. So what we wanted was we know that this product will sell around about 1 per week per store. So that would give us quite a good volume, about 85,000 a month if we did it that way. Now, from there, we wanted to sell the global rights. So we already had the US wholesaler because we asked that the wholesaler be a publicly listed company. They're on the OTC stock exchange in the US, and we were able to take that and then start to build it from there. When we did make the offer, which hasn't gone through yet, we made a territorial buyback offer. So we said, you're not interested in Australia, none of the stores you supply are in Australia, let us buy back Australia and we'll manage that. So we already know that Bunnings and the likes are going to be very interested in this product. So we haven't even started there, we've started in the US and worked backwards. So when we did that, we also asked for the franchise rights, and the reason for that is we know that we can build a franchise around this. So we've actually doubled the slice of the cake as well. So we put another layer on the cake. We used Fix a Hole, which is basically an ancillary franchise where we take the, let's say someone might have a tap doctor franchise and they're driving around the street, they've got this as well, and their 1-800 number rings, it's in their territory, they get a call, they'll turn up. For $165, they'll spend their 30 seconds filling that hole and charging for that. And if there's extras, they'll charge extras, of course. But that pretty much is an ancillary franchise, very low cost for ancillaries, usually around about $22,000, including all the training and the first products and all the operations manuals and everything else, all whacked into there. Somebody's operational within 24 hours. And then finally, we negotiated a buy price. When we hand over the molds, when that all happens, we can buy from China for Australia at cost plus 20%. But they negotiated for the franchise, we still have to buy for $9, which is the price that they will ship to that's the price they're currently paying as a USA wholesaler, and they then sell it for $16 to Lowe's and Home Depot, and of course they sell it for $29.95. So that gives you the quick overview of a model that can work, and it can work remarkably well if you do it right. So let me just finish with this. As you can see, this is a statement out there. I'm not a great fan of Rick Godwin, but still, one reason people resist change is because they focus on what they have to give up instead of what they have to gain. Very important in when we work with innovation. Okay, well, thank you for that. Sorry it was so fast, but I had 20 minutes worth of stuff to give you in 15, and I did it under 15, so perfect. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Daniel. Yes, any questions open? So I guess there is lots of questions that can come out, and it's good to see the process of using ideas, IP, and all the way to commercialization and globally even.
Yes.
Simon.
Hi.
Thank you, Daniel, again for a great talk. I like the story of filling a hole in the market, as you would say, with your system. My question would be, when you value these systems, when you start negotiating between inventors and companies, what is the models that you use to actually, because I imagine the inventor would say it's worth millions and the buyer would say it's just half that. What are the kind of models that you currently use?
The primary model I use is net present value of future earnings discounted for risk. And I have to prove those future earnings. And we do that with our market validation. Prior to actually raising capital, we do three things. We do market validation, proof of concept, and we do a transition audit. That market validation gives us what this product's going to be worth. So we know for this product that we'll sell one per store retail. And we know that North America has 21,000 stores in those 4 companies. So we know what the value is going to be.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
We have the man of questions, Alessio. You have a question, I think.
Okay, anyone else?
Alessio has his hands up, but maybe.
Yes, I did have a question. Yes, so I think in my field, I have a number of startups that sometimes they come in, especially in AI. And I think the one difficult thing is, what about the algorithm? How patentable is the actual algorithm? I come from a standard patent where we patent the technology, but sometimes algorithms in AI become quite complex because they're made up of, code which is borrowed from place to place. So what will be the first thing to tell to these people?
Well, I'm less worried about patenting and more worried about commercial value. There is plenty of products out there that don't have patenting potential, but as long as I get path to market and speed to market, I can actually make good money on it.
Okay, then the question then will be, let's say that I come up with an idea and I don't patent my AI code. Somebody comes in 3 years from today and somehow they got my code and they decide to patent it. Am I not able to use that code anymore?
No, they can't patent it if you've already got it out there because it's public domain.
Okay, yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, okay. All right, no, that was all. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks. Okay, any others? No. Sorry for being so fast, guys. I just wanted to get a good point across quickly. Oh, you have a hand? Yes?
Thanks, Daniel. I was just wondering if we can just dial back a little bit, those 6 steps that you gave us at the beginning,
Yes.
which one do you reckon most points of failure occur at out of the 6?
Ideation and modelling. Without question. And also, because they don't get that right, they fail at the third step, which is funding. People can't raise money. They do 300 presentations. I can tell you what we do with our way of raising capital. We can do it in 4 presentations or less, and we can teach anyone to do it in 2 weeks. So 4 presentations or less, but we only go for between $500,000 and $2 million. We don't take more than that.
Okay, I just intuitively went for transition. I thought the inventor, you'd find it difficult getting the inventors out of the room.
No, we have to really teach the inventors that they have to change their hat. And with transitioning, we do use a lot of contractors. So everyone thinks they should wear the hat for that manage the project, and they don't have any experience in law, finance, accounting, marketing, all of that. And when they realise that they only don't need to hire someone for that, they just need to contract somebody for a piece of it, then they're quite okay with it. But the big risk is cycling back into R&D. Let's put another left-handed handle on that instead of what it's got. So, and that can become a problem.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any others? No, that's it. Thank you, Alexi.
Thank you very much, Daniel, and everybody for questions.